Hey, welcome back to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. I'm a little hyped up on coffee.
Get ready to rumble!
It's a little hyped up for Monday.
Right. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the show. I am Josh Hayes here with Chuck Manley and Scott Moon. Hey, let's all take a sip together. You guys were
on three.
Except that I have the coolest cup.
You do.
And
that is.
I just have a vanity cup. It's got my initial on it.
Yes. Welcome to the show, everybody in the live chat. I'm trying to go to YouTube to see who was the first comment because StreamYard recycled and now I can't see it. Hold on, let me go there.
Oh no,
I can't see it.
No,
not at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Anyway, we'll go off of this one. Let's see. I was the first comment, Keystroke Medium.
There you go.
Well, I get the golf clap of appreciation from.
It feels a bit incestuous, but I'll clap.
It
for
really
anyway.
does. Kind of masturbatory.
I'm trying to find it. Oh, here it is. Let's see. Who was?
I love John Evans says.
Scott Moon Ryder was the first. He says, hello, but actually it's Corey Gillum. We'll give Corey Gillum the golf clap of appreciation for the first comment. Thank you, Corey. Let's see. Rick's in the chat. Charlie Dunn's in the chat, rolling through Illinois today. Welcome.
Sweet. John Evans from across the pond.
Hello, John, or good evening, afternoon. Hello.
It'd be evening for him now, yeah.
Dinner time.
Yeah.
Let's see. Leo Vaquero on Facebook says, hello. What's up, Leo? Lauren Morris in the chat. Hi, Lauren. It's going to be a good show today. We're going to have Jeff Haskell on later. He had to run and go do something this morning, so he's going to hop on here later on. Ekeke is going to break it down.
Hi.
The breakdown
in the superhero genre.
Yes.
I've been looking forward to this one.
He's got a best-selling superhero series. It's the Paragon series,
Pantheon.
right?
Pantheon.
Oh, Chuck's the Paragon.
I'm the Paragon.
Paragon.
Too many P's in the chat. That's right. We're going to talk about that a little later. If you didn't already know, if you're listening on the audio feed, we have a live show every Monday morning-ish. Come and subscribe to the channel on YouTube. It's youtube.com/Keystroke Medium. Subscribe. If you're watching right now, here's your call to action. If you're watching, scroll down below the video, and you're going to see on YouTube a little thumbs up. Just a little thumbs up. Not the thumbs down, the thumbs up. And click on that thumbs up. And do that for me right now. That'll help us get visibility on the video. And if you haven't subscribe already. We also have coffee for sale, KeystrokeMedium.com. Get your Keystroke coffee, your writer's block. We're going to have these up for sale here pretty soon.
I say you can put your coffee in a coffee cup.
You could put it in a Keystroke coffee cup. I also got these. Look at this. You guys see my background right now? This is a Keystroke coffee pillow. No.
Wow.
I did see the pillow. It looks like an anger management pillow. You should go punch it right now.
Damn you. I'm going to get a dartboard with Scott's face on it.
That's how they sell. We should make that a product.
Keystroke dart.
Keystroke dartboard.
Literally keystroke, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
So if you're into the coffee and you want to do some drinking, check it out on the website. And that's all the plugs I have right now for this show. I might come up with some later. Oh, Charlie Dunn says Writer's Block is the best one. That is true.
Oh, I would like to formally on the air wish Kayleen Williams a happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Great minds, brother. Great minds.
Kaylee Williams, she's a fantastic host on the Writer's Journey, and also she uploads all of our video as audio on our podcast link. She does a hell of a job on that. Really a lot of work to manage. She uploads like 3 different shows a week, and just phenomenal job. So
Kayleen is awesome. Happy birthday.
Thank you, Kayleen, and happy birthday to you.
I like to singing to you guys.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, happy birthday, Kayleen. You're awesome and you're great. We all think you're awesome.
Well, I'll go first on what we've been up to this week, because if you haven't noticed, I got my walls painted.
You did.
And
and you picked such an exciting color.
I did not pick the color.
Not the color we agreed on.
I did not pick the color. I did not have a say in the color. The color was assigned to me. But it looks good. I'm getting my office set up. I did a video. You could see it on the group. Little office tour I did last night. I've got my writing computer back over there next to the window. I've got a window. And super excited about that. And really excited to get everything. I got to get carpet in my room in a couple weeks, so I've got to tear everything down and put it back together.
It seems remarkably inefficient.
So are
It
you?
really
Are you
does.
yeah, a little bit. Are you still in Kansas City, or are you in one of the suburbs now?
Wichita.
Sorry.
Wichita.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, we actually just moved. It's like 2 miles away from our old house.
Okay.
And it's just a bigger place in a different neighborhood, and we're redoing the floors throughout the house, redoing the carpet and all that, and my room,
different schools too, right?
different school. Well, yeah, Jay's going to stay in the same school until the year switches, and then she'll go to
Right.
Mays. But I didn't have I've got like this little like paper thin covering over the concrete that it looks like carpet, but it's not carpet, and so I'm going to get some fluffy carpet with padding. Okay, so other than that, let's see, what have I done? Oh, I finished my short story for the We Dare anthology yesterday. And we all joke about my word counts with Chris Kennedy stuff. I was super close this time. I was like this close to making. I'm only 800 words over, which for me is like a really big
That's like
thing.
a bullseye. That's a bullseye. That's exactly on target.
I mean, right there. Ding. I was telling Chuck before we started, I had like all this stuff that I had in the book, or the story rather, that was really fun and really cool to write. But then I went back and looked at them like, I don't really need that in the short story. So I took it all out, but it could have definitely easily been a novella. So Casey's looking at it right now, and she's going to send me back her thoughts, and then we'll submit it. Way easier than last time. Last time we were up to like 11:30 the night.
I remember that.
The night of the deadline. Submitted.
Deadlines are awesome.
So this week I'm going to start. I found all my yellow notepads for Tranquility. I'm going to start outlining book 2 and 3 now that I've got a lot of boxes unpacked, and that's what I've got from myself this week. I don't think I have any more. Scott, you go next.
Right when I muted to cough.
He planned it that way.
Yeah, so writing, I finished Invasion Day, came out in about 93,000 words, which was good. It's one of those stories where I was having a blast with it. It's probably one of the most fun that I've written for a long time with some of the side characters, but I was having a hard time resolving the series and all of that. But then it kind of came together, so I was very happy. I finished Orphan Wars the week before that and started working on those edits and outlining book 2. I started wearing this very comfy sweatshirt that I got for Christmas that I thought was going to be too hot, but it has like this Sherpa fleece in there, and it's fabulous. It's the best thing ever.
Looks fluffy.
Yeah, it's very cozy. I'm pretty sure one of my kids is going to steal it from me if I ever take it off. So I can never take it off.
They know you can arrest them, right?
Yeah, I'll put them. I got control of their like Steam accounts and stuff. So
there you go.
Smart.
But
Yeah, get consent.
yeah, exactly. So no, it's good. I'm having a good week. I'm very, very happy. I got to go to some really boring training tonight, which is going to kind of blow, but whatever. Yeah, I'm good. What about you guys?
Cece, why don't you go next? We'll leave Chuck for last.
Sure. So yesterday I actually just uploaded the final-ish version of United We Stand, which is the 6th book in the Pantheon Saga series.
Awesome.
So that, because now it's like 4 days away before it launches. It's going to launch this Thursday. And now I'm going to, I think the next couple things I'm going to do is I'm going to start working on the outlining for a new series that I'm going to be working on. Can't really reveal too much yet, other than it is going to be like space opera, military sci-fi. It's a nice kind of return to form.
Very cool.
And yeah, and then there's an outline for a novella that I'd like to do. That's a prequel novella to the Pantheon Saga, because I'd like to add it to the. I was thinking of doing a box set of like maybe the first 3 books. I was thinking of maybe releasing that maybe probably early spring, early to mid spring. So like, and one thing I like to do with my box sets is that, it has the books and that's cool, but I like adding kind of little tiny things to it. So those are probably some of the big things I'm going to be doing this
Nice.
week.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Chuck, what about you, brother?
Well, let's see. Life-wise, my son had a big weekend full of plays that he was involved with, and I got my Christmas present finally, which was having the city come out and run a gas line to my house so I could get gas appliances in my kitchen, which is awesome.
Gas stove is legit.
It is. Love it, love it, love it. Daughter's doing softball. Her tournament season starts up next weekend, which will just be awesome. And as far as writing goes, still working on Jack Dark Book 2. Had a little bit of a setback. I just had one of those days where I wrote like 1,800 words, and the main character had done something he wasn't particularly proud of, and he's talking to his friend about it, just trying to deal with the knowledge that he did what he had to do kind of thing. But there was like zero tension for like an entire chapter. I mean, it was just kind of bleh. So I just deleted the whole kit and caboodle and went back and had to, about completely reworked it so I can get moving forward again.
It's interesting. Sometimes when I have that happen, even if I know like, okay, I'm not super happy with this chapter. God bless that you did that. Sometimes I'll just leave it and I'm like, I'll edit it. I'll make it better in editing.
It's just, I know if I'm going to cut it anyway, I'd rather just go ahead and just chop that limb off and graft a new one on. Because I just knew it was coming out in the final product anyway. So I was like, get rid of it. Hey, man.
What's up, Jeffrey Haskell?
Well, we'll see how this works. I'm at my dentist office.
That is amazing.
The best.
That's a first. That is a first.
I don't know that we've ever had a show at the dentist office before. So
I don't think we have. We've had one from like a kid's sports field.
True.
Your dentist is pretty awesome.
Oh, there he went.
I tried to do one from my kid's car pickup line at school.
True.
And
I think
I think that's about it.
If we can surprise remote locations, I think on this show are 100% the best thing about.
If we can get some teeth pulled on camera, this might
would be awesome.
Yeah,
dude, he's doing.
We could just interview the dentist.
So that being said, we can ask Jeff about like what he's doing right now. I think we kind of know he's at the dentist office. So,
so we've been going over kind of what we've been up to this week. Jeff, would you care to share what you've been up to?
I think we should wait till he gets the Novocaine injection, and
then it's like
he's drooling.
Who needs Novocaine for that? I can just make that up.
Nice.
Well, hopefully you guys can hear me okay.
We can.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. What I've been up to? Well, I'm about 80,000 words into my sequel to my big military sci-fi that I'm working on, and I'm also prepping for my giant one book in 24-hour challenge. I'm going to be live streaming next week.
Good God.
Which I'm really excited to you. Brought to you by Keystroke Medium Coffee.
What madness is this?
True.
And I'm pretty excited about that. I'm actually my dentist is my brother-in-law, and he's really cool.
Nice.
And it's actually across the street from a hotel I'm going to probably be staying at. I have to go check their internet connection after this. So I'll be renting a hotel, getting a good night's sleep, and then getting up at 6:30 in the morning to start the Writestream.
So are you going to go like 6:30 to 6:30, 1 24-hour stretch, and try to do, how many words are we looking at?
I'm starting it at 6:30, but I'm not going to start writing until 7. So 7 a.m. to 7 a.m., 2,000 words an hour for 24 hours.
Ambitious.
Wow.
Yeah. Go big or go home.
Yeah, man. Balls to the wall. Go for it.
So I've got a great strategy for it. I've got stretches to do every hour. I've got the amount of caffeine I need to drink every hour to stay alert. 5 hours for the 2 o'clock and the 2 a.m. section, which are going to be the hardest. It'll be great. It'll be fun. I'll be writing Wraith, which is super easy to write for me. She's just, kill everybody. That's the mission. And kill all the bad people. And it'll be great. And I've been working on this military sci-fi for so long right now that it's my writing level has just increased leaps and bounds over the last year. So it'll be fun to go back to a first-person narrative and see how that has evolved.
It's interesting how fast, in my experience, how fast first-person writes when you've been doing third for a really long time and then you jump into first. It's almost like it's just a freeing kind of blah, 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 blah. Like,
Yeah. I did it once for a short story, and I was like, I didn't expect it to be as easy as it was, because at first I was like, oh, how am I going to do this? And then I did it, and I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of fun, actually.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you can get into the head of your POV character and you really
Yeah.
understand that character, you're basically just, it's like sitting across the table from somebody and telling them a story over a drink. You know, you just kind of throw it out there in that character's voice. I mean, I enjoy writing in first person.
I like
a lot.
first person now, but I didn't used to. I used to really struggle with it because I felt like every other word was I, or so the pronouns felt really repetitive. But since 2019, somehow I've done most of my writing in first person, and I like it. But I had to teach myself to do it. It's hard at first.
Yeah.
I it's funny that you mentioned the whole like seeing the I in first person, because that's one of the things that like bugs me about first person is like every sentence is I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. And it was a really interesting exercise in trying to come up with ways to say what they were doing without using the I.
The I or me.
It's a great way to kind of test yourself and push yourself as an author, because it's like, if you're used to, like for me, I'm used to writing third person limited and also doing multiple POVs. So doing like I'm probably going to be doing it again for my next series, but doing it that one time again, it was kind of like, you're just like, oh, okay, I have to think about this differently. I have to approach this in a different format. And that's a good thing, because you're kind of stretching your skills and trying something different, which is always good, because it's like sometimes you don't realize you might be getting stagnant in some area, and then it's just like, okay, I tried this, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe I can try this, lean in this for a little bit, and see where I can go. So.
Yeah, and there's also like something I do with my my Brace Cordova books is whenever I'm talking about Brace and his crew and all that, I tell everything in first person from his point of view. But if I switch over to a scene with outlying characters, bad guys, supporting cast, whatever, I switch over to third person. You know, that's I think the first time I saw somebody do that was Nelson DeMille.
I really want to write something omniscient. I almost started a book the other day, because that's not a style people use anymore. And I think it would be a challenge. It'd be a stretch goal. Like
it very much would. They know everything.
So we had a question in the chat before we jump into our superhero conversation. We have a question for Jeff from Jake Clifton Slater asks, when I write exhausted, I do awful things to my characters. How is Jeff going to prevent taking his characters off the deep end?
Well, like you said, it's a kill 'em all book. So like you said, you just...
Yeah, we're talking about a woman who's possessed by a demon that feeds on the death of others. So in the 4 books that she's been part of, she's been partially eaten, she's been burned alive, she's been in an explosion, she's been atomized. There's not a lot more I can do to that poor woman physically and mentally, because I've really done a lot to her. At this point, it's become how she gets through the things, not is she going to make it.
You can make her
but also
Jedi.
To answer your question.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. To answer your question, nothing really, because that's not really my problem. I write tired all the time. My big deal is if I'm not feeling well mentally, my books get really, really dark, and nobody wants to read that. So, but luckily I'm feeling great, and being tired won't be that much of an issue. I've got 4 kids. Staying up 24 hours is not something that is outside the realm of my possibility, and being alert while I'm doing it is not that hard. The hardest time, like I said, will be 2 o'clock and 2 a.m. because those are the times that your body most wants to sleep. So
I'm going to set my alarm and wake up at like 1:45, and then just start bugging you on your stream. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.
Please do. Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be fun, because I'm thinking how it's going to go is the first 4 or 5 hours, it's going to be more like 3,000 words an hour. And then that will give me some wiggle room at the end, where I won't have to be quite so productive, at the 18, 19, 20 hour mark. Hopefully,
get a little bit of a buffer zone there.
The thing about first person narrative though is the reader doesn't, just like said, the reader doesn't really see I. They just don't
Right.
see it.
They don't. But you can always,
you don't want to start.
a little bit.
Yeah, and you don't want to start 7 sentences in a row with "I did this" and "I did that." But then, you have the similar problems with third person. You don't want to start 7 sentences in a row with the person's name or things like that. So
Right.
just usual craft rules apply.
And that's one of the things that's great about that is you just, particularly first person, just kind of like if you're in third person, you talk about how the environment affects them, maybe something that's on their mind. So it's not just like a laundry list. I think that was an issue I kind of had when I was reading The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, is that it was a good book, but at times it was very dry, and it's just sometimes there was laundry lists going through things, and it's just like,
Right.
what about the environment? Like, how does it affect them? Especially if you're talking about a vigilante, they have to be hyper aware. So it's just like, talk about the environment. What are they observing? What are they seeing? What exactly is percolating through their senses? That type of thing. So,
Yeah.
or military as well. Exactly. So,
Do we want to get Charlie's question?
Okay, yeah. Charlie Dunn asks, do you guys use life experiences in your books?
Absolutely.
absolutely, everyone does.
I like to take life experiences and then like kind of tweak it a little bit where
Well,
it's
yeah.
not.
I mean, I don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't do raw. You don't do it like completely. This happened, but
Yeah.
if there's sometimes where it's just like, oh, go on.
No, I was going to say, like, emotionally speaking, if I want a reader to feel a specific way, then I'll think of, for instance, in Strikers War, my Galaxy's Edge novel, I wanted the readers to feel real pain at the end of the book. And so I specifically looked up several posthumous Medal of Honor award citations and worked out my own, but then also worked out the feeling of the main character using how I felt when my friend got killed on the sheriff's department. And so I used that raw emotion and put it in there. And the number one thing I see on reviews on Strikers War is they're cutting onions, or I had allergies, or you made me cry, and blah, blah, blah. And that's that's exactly what I wanted the reader to do. So
I mean, that's art in a nutshell. I mean, I've always said that art is the transfer of emotion through some sort of medium, whether it's film or words or underwater basket dancing or whatever. But yeah, man, I don't think anybody can really write without doing that, even if they're doing it unconsciously, because you only know what you know. You've only been through what you've been through. So when you're trying to recreate a feeling on a page, you're gonna have to draw on your own life to get there.
Yeah, it's like every person, every writer always puts a piece of themselves into their books, whether it be just the emotion, whether it be a modified memory or people that they know, like one part of the Pantheon Saga that I did in like the first 4 books, there was one character who kind of worked in news media, and I took some of my experiences in corporate America and I modified them and I put them in certain characters and whatnot. And just, I think it's sometimes easy. Like some people do it I wasn't doing it for revenge. I know some people sometimes do writer's revenge where they kind of take a person they hate and then kind of kill them off. I didn't do that. I didn't do that. Didn't do that yet.
So did that.
But I did it where it's just like certain people are just like, oh, okay, this is a good archetype for what I can put in the story. And so, yeah, you always kind of put in life experiences. And that's, I mean, I think it's a good way to humanize certain characters. That way it's like you're not just writing this archetype. It's like, hey, there's this person I knew or this person I didn't like, and you're kind of filling in some of the things that they might say, some of the ways they might act.
Sure.
And again, it's how your main character kind of responds to that, how they bounce off that, or how they affect the environment around them, whether they're just a minor character, whether they're a major character, whether they're antagonist, or even, a secondary protagonist, that type of thing.
Yeah.
I attacked the hospital I used to work in with a pack of hellhounds.
Of course you did.
Never wrong. Hellhounds attacks are pretty tight.
So let's talk about superheroes for a minute. I'm still looking for the link to our book sponsor. So I'll find it in a couple minutes, and then I'm going to cut somebody off and do the sponsor, and then we'll jump back on. Jeff and Cece, you guys have been writing superhero fiction for a while, and both of you have done really well. It's a kind of a niche genre. And I don't know that there's a lot of people writing specifically superhero fiction, but you guys are doing it and you're doing it well. So if we could talk about like, there's definitely a difference between superhero movies and superhero books, but what do you find in writing your books that readers want or resonate with readers the most in your fiction? Cece, you want to take the first?
Sure. So what they resonate with is more than anything the characters. They want a couple things. One, they want superheroes do. I think this is actually, I'm quoting Jeff here possibly. They want superheroes doing superhero things. They don't just want this deconstruction that has been overdone since the Watchmen. They want superheroes to be big damn superheroes. They want them to save people. They want them to act like superheroes. No one's saying that they need to be perfect, but they need to be superheroes. You need to be able to root for them. Another thing that people really enjoy is they like the characterization. They like how these are fleshed out characters. The two main characters in my series, it's kind of a carnival situation where you have the hero and you have the villain. You've seen their origins, now they're going to clash. So people are kind of like, oh, I can't wait for this to happen, or they're interested in what the side characters are doing, how they're going to affect. So they really enjoy the characterizations and they like how they're humanized. And one of the things that I've actually seen, one of the comments I've seen in reviews is people who, some of them are lifelong comic readers, or they're reading comics like way back when in the golden age or the silver age. And they're saying like, this takes me back to when comics were like that in that point. And that's kind of what I want to do, is that with a lot of genres, superhero included, it's about having something familiar but adding your own twist to it. And not making sure that you're not disrespecting the genre, even if you're adding something, even if you're lampooning maybe a thing in it, whether it be a name, whether it be one thing, as long as you have respect for the genre. Again, I think I'm quoting Jeff here too again, but it's like you have to make sure that with superheroes that you're respectful and you're having fun with it as well. You're enjoying it, because your enjoyment is going to come across on the screen, even in the darkest moments. And also, here's another thing. Don't be afraid to put your character through the ringer, because I think in Kurt Vonnegut's 8 Rules, that's when you see what your characters are made of, whether they be the villain or the hero. Put them through the ringer, torture them, but make sure that just like you show how they persevere through this situation.
What do you think about Jeff? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what's really interesting is Charles and I have different strengths as writers, and our books are wildly different. His are definitely more geared toward adults, and they're about teenagers, and mine are geared more toward YA teenager, people who like those kinds of books, but are about adults. So it's kind of funny. But the thing is that the reason why his books work, even though there's stuff in it that's not in my books, is that we both come from the same place. We respect the medium, we respect the characters, and we respect the work that's come before us. I'd never met anybody in my life who knew more about comics than I did until I met Charles. And it was really funny because he's only a couple years younger than me, and so we overlapped on almost all the things that we read growing up. And so it's really fantastic. And so when we both went into superheroes, we're like, okay, I want to take these characters I loved as a kid that you can't read anymore because the people currently writing them suck.
Yes.
And I want to make my own stories that are like that, but respect that age of comics that we came from. And so, when I was growing up in the late 70s, 80s, and 90s reading comics, those were the stories, the Dark Phoenix saga, Avengers Disassembled, things like that. Those are the stories that meant a lot to me. So that's what I wanted to write, and so I did. And so I've got these, and of course I love the Punisher, which is why I write the Wraith. I mean, the Punisher. I'm not a huge Batman fan. I like Batman. I respect Batman, but he's not he's not my top 5. He's in my top 10, but he's not my top 5. Mostly because nobody writes him right. They always write him as a punchy.
Not the world's greatest detective,
not
Neil
the world's
greatest fighter.
I think
Exactly.
honestly, Neil Adams probably did one of the best things on Batman. He's the reason why Batman took the direction that it is now, because before that, the comics were very Adam Westy, And then it was in the 70s where Neil Adams is starting to kind of veer towards those more darker stories, the more detective stories, the more cerebral ones that a lot of people leapfrogged off of. And going back to something that Jeff said, here's something that is a big problem with comics as a whole. This was even before the current crappy era. It's that you have these next generations of heroes, especially you don't see this as much. You see it to a degree with Marvel, but it's really like rubber stamped when it comes to DC, whether it's like you have Superman with Connor Kent and now his son, Jonathan, Wonder Woman with Donna Troy and Cassie Sandsmark, or Batman with his variety of Robins. You have this next generation who's just waiting in the wings to kind of take the mantle of their predecessor or their mentor, and then nothing happens. So they're just some of them, like particularly with Tim Drake. Tim Drake is kind of caught between this really bad name, Red Robin, where he would have probably been the best person after Dick to become Batman. And now he's not Robin anymore. And now you had Damian. I guess he's not Robin anymore either, but whatever. But the thing is that they're just sitting there, and now they're doing.
I hate Damian so much.
Yeah, and then they're doing Future State.
I'm with you.
Yeah, Damian's he's a little punk. He worked. Here's the thing: he worked best when Dick was Batman. That's when he worked best. Now he doesn't. He's just a brat, a murderous brat, mind you. But the thing is that one of the things I'm doing in my I almost said comics, superhero books, is I'm showing the passing of the guard. Because eventually it's going to have to happen. It's just never happening in these comics, these mainstream comics. But I'm showing that, okay, the old guard, they kind of had their adventures, they had their time. Now we're seeing this next generation take over. And not all of them are going to be just clones or carbon copies of the generation that came before. You're going to see a new generation, whether they be scions or children of the old heroes, or they're just people who just are coming up out of nowhere and fought to get their spot. And so I think that's super important where you're seeing this passing of the guard. It's not going to be easy. It's not something that's just handed off. It's something that these new heroes have to earn. And I think more than anything, that is so important to show that and show on their journeys. Because I think going back to why things suck now with a lot of comics is that you have these people who are replacing them, particularly in Marvel. Marvel did this with Marvel Now like 5 years ago. And the thing is that we're supposed to care about these characters just because they're, a woman or, different, they love somebody different, or they're, a different ethnicity. And it's just like, first off, they're never going to replace that character. Two, you keep reminding us 3 other characters that they're not that character. 3, if you, one of the biggest comic companies in the world, cannot build new heroes that are independent of these legacy characters, then you suck and you're not doing your job. So
and I think
preach, brother, preach.
I think one of the things that gets tired in comics and even movies now is forcing a character into a new identity. Instead of just creating a new character that people will enjoy, they take an old character and kind of smash them into a different role or a different identity, and that kind of
changing the branding is what they're doing. I mean, that's all it is.
And I think with going back to that, I think the one character where it would make sense for somebody take the new mantle would actually be a Batman. It just actually makes the most sense because, I mean, it's not realistic that Bruce Wayne can do this forever. So one of his proteges, or maybe even somebody new, that would actually make sense.
They kind of did that with Batman Beyond, though. Yeah,
they did. But it ended up being like, I think one of the biggest problems is that some of these characters, the legacy characters, they're just taking it and they're piggybacking off what was built by that legacy character.
Yes, I agree with that.
As opposed to building their own legacy.
Whole new thing, yeah.
Yeah, like I think even with Batman it would work. But it was funny, going back to what Jeff said, the problem I have with Batman, I don't know if I said this on the show, but I used to like Batman. Like, I wasn't like the hugest Batman fan of the world, but I kind of like the whole thing about he's not really street level anymore, but a street level vigilante who kind of was like, kind of like no powers, but he had his mind and he honed his body into like this peak specimen of human, just, basically he turned his body into a weapon. But there's a friend of mine who is a huge geek as well. And he basically broke down why Batman sucks. And I can never look at Batman again because of that. Because he basically said, well, look at this guy. You have this guy who's a billionaire. in his civilian identity. And what is he doing to really fix the city other than playing dress up and punch people? Especially when you have a criminal justice system where these villains always escape. And
revolving door.
and I remember even this one time, I think it was a death, not a death in the family, but it was a death of the family, where Joker escaped again, and I think he cut his face off and sewed it on. But the thing is, it got to the point where he was holding a group of people hostage, and in my mind, I'm thinking like Scott Evil from Austin Powers. I'm like, just shoot him, kill him,
just shoot him,
kill him, because it's like it's at a point where it's like, this guy, it's no longer funny, it's no longer cute. How many people has he killed? How many people has he tortured? It's like, just kill him, go Wraith on him, kill him.
Go Wraith on him. Yeah, exactly.
I was just so tiresome at this point. I'm like, you know what, Batman, this is on you because he's still alive.
Exactly. At some point, you have to the accountability has to fall on the person who lets it keep happening. You know. Yeah. Okay, so I got a question.
I'm of the opinion of I'm more like with how Marvel used to be, which is the characters age to the middle age or whatever. Peter gets married, whatever, and then you just freeze it. There's no need to replace them with new characters. You want to make new characters? Great, make new characters. But there's no need to get rid of Spider-Man. There's no need to get rid of Iron Man or Hulk or anybody or Thor. There's no need. The characters work the way they are. They're beautiful the way they are. You can tell interesting stories with them. And if you can't, then you've hired the wrong writer.
Exactly.
And, you know, this whole trend for the last 15 years of we've got to replace them, we got to make these characters look different. Like, no, you don't. You just need to make new characters that people like. But the problem is you have this crop of writers who don't know how to do that. Yeah. Because they've never read the comics that we grew up reading. They've never read the books that we grew up reading. And so you can learn a lot about writing by reading about writing, but there are things that you can't learn unless you read other people's words.
Right.
Yeah. And so
And that's true, yeah.
Let's take a break for a second. I want to do the show sponsor, and then we'll get to Chuck's question. I've got
he said he'd cut somebody off.
I'm cutting off Chuck, which is, I think that's a trend on this show.
It's kind of a tradition, yeah.
Okay, so this week's sponsor is the science fiction novel workbook by James S. Aaron. It just like days ago popped up on Amazon. This is a tool that James has been working on for a while. It's a workbook that will help you go from the beginning of it to the end of your novel working on it. And it says the blurb is, defeat writer's block and increase your writing speed by knowing what you want to write and making a plan to get the work done. The science fiction novel workbook is your offline tool for focused work on your novel project. Inside, you'll find tools to help you, such as identify your ideal reader, write a blurb that sells, build great characters, design intriguing antagonists, create detailed world buildings to support your story, plot your story to the scene level, track word count goals while you're writing, keystroke Rimo, plan your launch and assess your marketing, create a reference tool for your series. I've written 1 million words in a year using this workbook. You can too, says James Aaron. I got to throw in of Doom for no apparent reason. Let me see if I got the link in the, yes I do. Cool. The link is in the live chat. Check this out. It's a physical copy book that's $5. You can't get a better deal than that. You get it on Amazon Prime. It gets there in a couple of days. James is a really good author. He's got a new show on Keystroke called The Marathon Author, which is really cool. And also there is a way to get this book for free if you're interested. We are running a survey right now for this season of Keystroke. And if you go to keystrokemedium.com/survey, which I'm going to put in the chat. If you go to keystrokemedium.com/survey, fill out this survey and leave your information. That's not the one I wanted to. No, stop it. Hold on. I've got to type it out because my computer's done. Keystroke Medium.
You cut me off for this.
Yeah, shush.
Well, I will say this, James Aaron, like, he's good people. I haven't read his book, but I know that he worked on Galactic Law, the Galactic Law series with Jay and Cheney, and he's also done some of the Aeon 14 series with M.D. Cooper. So the guy's got the chops, he's got the backlist. He's good. He knows what he's talking about.
Yep. Go and pick up the book and then do the survey. If you do the survey, we'll pick 3 people and send a copy of this book for free to the 3 lucky winners. The survey takes like 15 seconds to fill out, and it will help our show going forward a crap ton. So let's see. Let's do that. Okay, now, Chuck.
Did we lose Jeff to the anesthesia, or is...
It would be so cool if we had like just a high Jeff Haskell on the show.
Okay,
well, I turned my video off because it was the internet sucks here, so it wasn't doing so great. But I'm here.
As you guys probably know, I'm kind of the token urban fantasy writer in this group, and I have written what I classify as a superhero series, and I've written a lot of urban fantasy series. So the 2 genres butt up against each other pretty closely.
They do.
And I have my own ideas about where that line is. And I'm curious what's the difference between a like Harry Dresden urban fantasy story and a Doctor Strange superhero book? You see what I'm saying? Like what's the dividing line between those 2 genres, in your opinion?
So, Jeff, you want to take that one?
Can I take this one?
Yeah.
I have strong opinions about this.
So do I.
Right.
Yeah.
So first of all, urban fantasy and superheroes do not cross over in any way whatsoever.
Oh, I didn't say crossover. I said they butt up against each other.
They don't. They really don't. There's
How
a
so?
huge tonal difference between urban fantasy and superheroes. Huge tonal difference. There's motivation differences. So Doctor Strange, for one, doesn't exist in a universe by himself. So that's part of it, right? So he's not Harry Dresden existing in a world that only has magic, dressing in a 3-piece suit, getting drunk, and going out and shooting demons or whatever Harry Dresden does.
It's Strange, not any of that, but okay, go ahead.
It's not. I've never read it, and I know that.
I've read them all.
But Doctor Strange is the sorcerer supreme of a prime reality on Earth. Right.
Okay.
So an Earth that has superheroes on it. So it is wildly different. Even if you wrote just a Doctor Strange book by itself, the fact that they have all these secret societies and superheroes and supervillains who use magic doesn't make it urban fantasy any more than being in space makes it hard sci-fi.
Okay, so, I hear what you're saying. But here's the thing to me. First of all, the Dresden, let's just focus on the Dresden books. A lot of urban fantasy is exactly what you're describing. It's just, miscreants killing demons. But I consider to be the better and more true of the urban fantasy is that you have these beings with power. Dresden is not the only guy in his universe. There's a whole cadre of wizards and secret societies and just all this other. Exactly.
Yeah.
The big difference between the 2, in my opinion, because basically Dresden is a wizard who operates in a place and he tries to protect the common guy from the supernatural evils, period. The biggest difference between him and like a Doctor Strange guy or maybe some guy in a space marine in a suit of powered armor versus Iron Man is 1, the level of power they have access to, 2, the ease with which they can access that power, and 3, just the common tropes. Because in superhero, you're going to see things like capes and cowls and secret identities and all that crap. Urban fantasy, it might be a hidden world kind of thing. But like if Harry Dresden wants to throw a fireball, it's work. He has to like really focus, and it's tiring and it's harder on him. He's more human. Doctor Strange does it. It's an afterthought, so he can cast the spell that rips open dimensions. Yeah. So you see what I'm saying there? I think that's the big dividing line.
So let me weigh in here. I feel that there's definitely a divide between them. If you're going pure urban fantasy, like if you're just looking at how the books are, like from what I understand, like a lot of urban fantasy, from what I've read, is first person, where, and you can do that with superhero too, but it's like, I think that's one thing. Two, a lot of times with these urban fantasy series, they live in a world where superheroes don't exist, superhumans, anything with powers is supernatural or paranormal or magic related. So
Correct.
that's if you're going like pure urban fantasy.
Yes.
I think that a superhero book can have urban fantasy leanings. That doesn't make it urban fantasy.
Exactly.
Like I've written 2 novellas where I introduced vampires, werewolves, and magic, and then even like I love this one, a Wendigo, into my universe. But that doesn't make it urban fantasy. It has urban fantasy leanings, but it's still primarily superhero fiction.
Sure, because there's lots of supernatural superheroes.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think I see kind of both where you guys are going, and I agree with you about the Dresden thing where he doesn't just shout some nonsense words in Latin and then all of a sudden a fireball or a portal appears. With what you see sometimes in superheroes, it's actually magic. He has to actually do the work, and it takes from him.
Well,
so it's not just.
I mean, you're talking about the difference of 2 soft magic systems because they're both soft magic systems, right? They're whatever the writer wants to do at whatever time the writer wants to do it to make the magic work. There's no formula like Brandon Sanderson comes up with for like hard magic system where. What did I step into?
Anytime we mention Brandon Sanderson, we have to take a shot.
Nice.
Gotcha. Brandon Sanderson. So, so you're talking about the difference between 2 soft magic systems. The biggest difference between superheroes and urban fantasy isn't anything to do with what you're writing about, but the craft you're using to write it. Superheroes obviously need to have costumes and superhero names, but not all of them have that. Not all of them have superpowers. Batman's a superhero,
right,
but he's in the superhero universe. In a universe by himself, he'd be more like vigilante justice genre than he would be superhero genre.
Or Christian
But then
Bale.
he probably wouldn't wear a costume.
So talking
the
about
thing is it's tone. It's the craft you're using. What is the purpose of the character that you're writing? What is the purpose of the story? How is the story unfolding? And this is all craft stuff answered behind the scene. If you are writing a superhero story, then you're writing a superhero story, and superhero stories follow certain guides and cues, just like urban fantasy does.
But there can still be leanings, though. Like there can still be dips in like some influences from.
Just because a book has romance in it doesn't make it a romance. It doesn't make it lean romance.
I agree, and that's
funny. Doesn't mean it leans comedy.
Hey,
Jeff, let me ask you.
Jeff says no. I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying that it has influences from other genres. Stuff. That's the thing. It's still a superhero story, but it's got like a romance, subplot, or it's got like
it's a human story.
Chinese dragon. It's got a Chinese dragon in it. I don't know. So
any good story is a human story,
right? Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think any story you could put a facade, like you could tell the same story in urban fantasy and in superhero fiction. It's just the way that it works out. Go ahead, Scott.
I was just saying, but one thing we can all agree on is that you clearly know if you're reading a urban fantasy or a superhero book.
Yes.
So there is
if they're well done.
The
reason I brought the whole thing up was I have read so much of the better selling urban fantasy, and to me they all read like just supernatural superhero stories, because these guys are like superheroes. I mean, just they can do whatever they want, and it's like, just the power level is over the top for what I would consider to be a proper urban fantasy story.
And I think another thing too, one thing you actually brought up, and that's an important thing with urban fantasy or even other stories, like when you have good stories, whether they be urban fantasy or superhero, is you don't want to run into the Silver Age Superman conundrum, or even the regular Phoenix, Jean Grey, Phoenix conundrum, where it's like they're so powerful that you have to come up with these ridiculous mental gymnastics scenarios or you have to do the Worf effect, as I like to say, the Worf effect, in order to kind of take them out or nerf their power. Right. And you're at a point where it's just like, just turn them evil at that point. If you can't find a way to make them,
somebody find the red kryptonite.
Yeah.
So what I'm curious about is what do you think in the superhero genre specifically? What do you think is the hardest thing to get right? I mean, you talk about like urban fantasy and superhero and meshing or butting up or whatever it is, but specifically in superhero, what do you see in your own experience and even in books that you've read that's the hardest thing to get right about superhero fiction?
I'd say that for one of the things when you're kind of deeper in the series and your hero's kind of established, I think one of the things is continuing to make this character interesting and engaging, because now they have this power, now they have this costume, now they are fighting crime, they've taken out some bad guys. How do you keep them interesting? How do you still keep them relatable? And making sure that there's still lessons to be learned for this character. What are the things that they still want? When I was going into writing my latest book, one of the things I wanted to show with him is he is, aside from just wanting to keep his family and friends safe, he wants to go back to some type of a normal superhero job, which is like inside. It's kind of like a fantasy. You can't go back to it, you know. And it's like he's had that constantly during the book, like people saying, "Dude, really? Yeah, right. Like a superhero job is normal. Come on." And it's eventually where he kind of accepts how just ridiculous his life is, and it's just like, okay, I just have to accept this is how it's going to be. But it's just a matter of like, what is it that he's still learning? And also another thing too, this is a huge problem. I'm going back to criticizing the comic industry. One of the biggest problems with them is that they have these big universe-defining, changing crossovers, these game changers. But here's the problem with a lot of DC and Marvel comics. They're basically like a snow globe. You shake them up, and then everything settles back the way it was before.
Exactly.
Whether it be in a couple months, whether it be in a year, whether it be 5 years, eventually somebody who dies, they're going to get resurrected somehow. I mean, the only person now who hasn't been resurrected is Martha and Thomas Wayne. Actually, Thomas Wayne did kind of get resurrected in another universe, whatever. So not even them. Uncle Ben at this point is the only person who hasn't get brought back to life, and I'm sure that's going to change.
Did Jonathan Kent come back?
I'm sure he didn't.
He was never dead.
If he
was
did
dead
die
in the movie. He never died.
Oh, he just died in the movie. You're right. My bad.
He's died once. He's died once or twice in the comic books.
Oh, has he?
Well, I mean, everybody died once.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the movie for some reason.
So the thing is
that
it's changing the status quo, keeping that change in status quo, and having how your characters react to it, how it changes how they approach things. I just did a huge status quo change in this last book, and things aren't going to be the same after that. And you have to kind of stick to that. And I think people will respect that more if you do that and you're able to commit to it, and it's not just a fake out. So
Right.
I think that's one of the harder things, is to have your characters. What are still their motivations at this point? How do you show that they're still struggling, and not just kind of, and that's a key thing too, not just kind of having a power upgrade in every book. I mean, that's kind of cool when you do that, but still making it show that they can struggle in a realistic fashion without having to Worf affect them.
Yeah. What about you, Jeff? What do you
One
think?
of the things I like about writing Wraith is that it's easy for me to modulate her powers, the way her powers work, because it's based on the energy she has, the internal energy she has. So if she kills a lot of people, she has a lot of power. If she doesn't kill anybody, she starts getting weak. So it's easy for me to put her in situations where she needs to use her wits over power. And it's interesting because you get the internal and external threats to a character. And I try to balance it so if there's like a big external threat to the character, then she has trouble getting the power she needs to defeat them. And if there's a big internal threat, she's got plenty of power. All the external stuff is easy, but it's the internal problem that really plagues her. But the thing is superheroes, the biggest problem with writing superheroes, the biggest problem I see other writers have writing superheroes is they don't treat the superhero genre seriously. They go for the camp, or they go for the cheese, they go for the 60s Batman. And the readers or they either want to do that or they want to write Watchmen again. And it's like there is nothing original about Watchmen. There's nothing original about The Boys. This is something that's been done to death inside the comics industry. It's only original people who are casually familiar with superheroes.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting
else,
that you mentioned that, because
like, oh my gosh, not again.
John Evans asked in the chat a little bit ago, does The Boys make you want to write a different perspective on superheroes now or at any point?
So about that. So here's what I'll say about that. The one thing I like the show. I've watched the show. I'd say the one thing that it kind of was interesting is the whole corporate aspect of it. I think that's actually a great angle to kind of add in, because I particularly, if superheroes were a thing, come on, you're saying that no corporation would take advantage of that. There wouldn't be some type of like Disney-like corporate. Like I even have that in my universe where there's like a Disney-like corporation that kind of markets teen superheroes. And that's kind of like, what if all these kids, like the Jonas Brothers, Demi Lovato, when they were all kids, mind you, Selena Gomez, Taylor Swift, Hilary Duff, they're all in a superhero team. How annoying would that be?
Right.
You know, and kind of like, what, these people are in your face all over. I mean, that whole capitalism push, I think works, but I do feel that going so dark and nihilistic and grimdark in terms of these superheroes are not really heroes, they're villains. I'm like, ugh, God, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt.
Yeah.
Just have that be an aspect of that world, but don't like go full grimdark. I mean, you can have one or two heroes that do that, but I feel that having that be the entire thing, it's kind of like after that it gets reductive, it gets boring, and it just gets, you know, it's just rote, and it's just like, why?
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's like when every cop movie is Training Day. Now every cop movie, you know, the cops are bad and corrupt, and they have a big wall full of money back in their house so they don't spend. It's just
or it's the Shield.
Yeah,
which is a good show, but I get your point. Yeah.
Okay, so
so what's interesting is real quick, just to add on to that, there's another, I see this a lot with veterans, is they're all, for a long time, they've been the enemy in TV shows and movies and things like that. So it's like, wow, I'd love a show or movie or TV show about a veteran who wasn't the bad guy, you know? So when I read superheroes, I don't do it because I want to read about bad guys and read about evil people. There's books that do that. Serial killer books do that way better than superhero novels ever will. Mm-hmm. But I want to read what you don't get everywhere else, which is hope. You don't get hope in places.
Yes.
I want to read about people who, they're human, they have foibles, and they struggle, but they overcome because they don't give up, and they inspire. And
I think that's what the MCU proved. You know, I think
absolutely.
That they proved that that's what people want out of the superhero genre, and I think the perfect word was hope. They just want the idea that there are some people of power out there trying to do the right thing, you know.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the Avengers movies with that hope aspect. Is when Endgame came out, there was a whole bunch of back and forth, and people didn't like the time travel, and they're like, oh, they're just throwing that in there. And it wasn't about that at all. Scott and I watched it and had a huge emotional reaction in the theater, and so did everybody else. Yeah. And you can nitpick the story, you can nitpick the writing, you can nitpick the time travel. That's not possible. Blah blah blah. None of that matters.
Right? People with superpowers, it's not possible.
Right? You can't have. First of all, it's either Hulk or Bruce Banner. You can't have both. Whatever. I don't care. But it's about that emotional, that resonance of hope and the good feeling, and that's what they were going for. They didn't care about any of the other stuff.
And you know, and adding to that about Endgame, actually going back to the first Avengers movie, when we saw that one shot, that circular around 360 shot of all of them united,
with the music rising,
yes, and their theme hits, that's what people go for. And especially, even better, going to Endgame, it's funny, from the first Avengers movie to the most recent Avengers movie, when you see Cap beaten down, injured, one man against a hurricane, one man against this massive army of thousands, and you know he's not going to give up. Even though he knows he's going to die, he's not going to give up. And then Cap on your left, and you see the portals open, and it's just like,
boom,
it's beautiful. Yeah. And that's what people want in the music. They don't just want people who with power who are going to fight against overwhelming odds, against all odds. I know you like that, Jeff. But they also want their faith, and they want that resolve, and they want that effort to be rewarded. And in Endgame, they saw that when Cap's resolve, his never say die attitude, I can do this all day, they want that to be rewarded. And so when they saw that, it was just such an emotional reaction. So when he finally said,
from these heroes who were these paragons of hope and virtue to these super badasses who could, the hero was just the guy that could win the fight. That was it. If he could win the fight, he was the good guy. And that was all that mattered. Power and the ability to kill and murder and maim and blah, blah, blah. And I think that over time, they've kind of come back to that fact that people don't really care who wins the fight as much as why they're fighting in the first place and what they're trying to accomplish and what they're trying to represent. I think that's much more of a, Yeah. And
even just seeing, like, you know, when things kind of at their grimmest, seeing kind of sometimes having that surprise where somebody you didn't expect comes to save the day, to show that, hey, as powerful as this hero is, sometimes you need your crew with you, you need your team with you to help you get through that, you know. And I think that's such an important thing too, because of course you want your hero to prevail and be able to win those one-on-one fights, but sometimes, hey, it takes a team. It takes
Avengers
allies.
Assemble, baby.
Yes, yes. And people want, and this is one of the reasons why, you know, I'm probably going to catch hell for this, but whatever. It's one of the reasons why Zack Snyder's vision got so thoroughly rejected, because it was relentlessly grimdark.
Right.
It was joyless. And it's not even about, some people say, oh, well, it doesn't have the jokes of the Marvel movie. I'm like, it's not even about the jokes.
No.
It's about an enjoyable experience. And Batman versus Superman was not an enjoyable experience. And it's
Scott loves that movie, by the way.
You like the Ultimate Edition or the theatrical edition?
You're on mute, Scott.
You're muted, buddy.
The one that gets me the most is Superman Man of Steel. That's the one I really don't like.
Right.
But Batman vs. Superman, it was kind of tedious.
That's a good word for it, tedious.
And it's
I like
unfortunate
that.
because I thought that Batfleck was actually, like, his warehouse fight scene was probably the best Batman fight scene we've seen on screen, bar none, hands down. But I think the problem with their version of Superman, I think everyone's fine with seeing Superman struggle when it comes to his role in the world, because this is like a world that's just beginning. But the problem is that they showed him as not being a beacon of hope. He's just scowling all the time and just grinning and bearing through rescuing people. And the thing is about it, I was kind of going back and watching some people doing retrospectives of it, whether they're defending it or, ripping on it again. And it pointed out a huge fundamental issue with Superman's portrayal, particularly in, not even necessarily Man of Steel. I mean, I had issues with that, but I actually liked that movie. But in Batman versus Superman, we didn't really get into what he was thinking when he was making these rescues. We just saw this montage of him rescuing people, and then the news people say something bad about him, and then he's just like, and he pouts. And it's just like, what would have been more fascinating if we see Superman reacting to a rescue, and then he's going, and then he's hearing somebody else needs his help. So what choice does he make? He has to
make best of two bad decisions.
Just
because even he can't be everywhere at once.
Yeah, and so that you can.
Well, it's funny is people like Zack Snyder talk about how, like, you can't have a Superman character today that won't resonate with the audience, blah blah blah, and then Marvel was like, "Hold my beer, here's Captain America."
Yes.
And
so I've got an interesting question before we wrap up. I've got one final question that I want to pose to both of you as far as the fiction writing goes. But I've got a question now that we're talking about Batman. The movie's not out yet, but the Batman with Robert Pattinson, because we're just talking about, like, the darkness of the grimdark of superheroes. And when you watch the trailer of this new Batman, like, I think it's even darker than Zack Snyder's Batman, just watching the trailer. What do you guys, do you have opinions on that? Do you have thoughts on the new Batman? What it might be?
So I think that I'm curious. I'm hesitantly curious because I'm just like, Jesus, we just did Batman.
Right.
But, I think that, and this is the lesson that was not learned by Zack Snyder when it comes to his DCEU, is that the grimdark works for Batman. But at the end of the day, what Batman is that he's taking that darkness. Nice one, Corey. He's taking that darkness and he's trying to be a beacon of hope for Gotham. Regardless of all the darkness of Batman, the darkness that he faces, the darkness that he spreads in terms of spreading terror, he is there because he's there to be hope. Like, one man is fighting against this overwhelming tide of corruption and crime that has overwhelmed Gotham, and he's trying to take the city back. So that is ultimately what he's supposed to show. And I think the Dark Knight trilogy in many ways did that well. It espoused those ideas well, but the problem is that many of these ones that have come after have not. They've just kind of like grimdark for grimdark's sake. And that's always a problem. I'm curious to see what Matt Reeves can do with this new Batman. It's interesting because this is Batman, I think, year 2 Batman. So he's still kind of learning his way as to who he wants to be as a villain. And the villain's going to be the Riddler, by the way. It's not a spoiler. It's not a spoiler.
Yeah.
So,
Jeff, any thoughts on the trailer for the new Batman?
You're on mute, Jeff.
Yes, I just had to unmute myself. I really liked the trailer. I thought the trailer looked cool. I think the trailer doesn't represent the movie at all because the trailer came out when the movie was still filming.
Yeah.
So who knows what the end result's going to be like. I didn't like the costume. I don't like the actor. We'll see what happens. I didn't like Affleck for Batman, and he turned out pretty good other than murdering people with machine guns. Because that's exactly what Batman's known
Very
for.
not Batman thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And about
I like
the,
the aspect that they're talking about as the detective.
Yes.
Because that's my favorite part of Batman, is that he is the guy. There's a quintessential Batman story from the early 2000s called it's got Omac in it, which was a big character from a long time ago.
Is it Tower of Babel?
Yeah, Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
And it's Batman had a file on every single superhero in existence on how to take it down. And to me, that's Batman. That's the quintessential Batman. He does not enter a room where he doesn't know the X's. He doesn't enter a fight that he doesn't have the upper hand.
Yeah.
It's why the animated cartoon works so well, and why in my opinion, most of the movies fail is because they focus on either the fights, or they either focus on Bruce Wayne or they focus on Batman, but they don't focus on the goal and the point of Batman. And they miss that because they don't understand it and they don't read the comics. And I think a lot of these superhero movie problems would be solved if they would just hire people who love the comics and love the source material.
Yeah, I think it's true for any
My name is
genre.
Jeffery Haskell. This is CC Ekeke, and we're available for hire, Marvel and DC.
I think that's really true for any genre, though. I mean, if you're going to do it effectively, you got to know it and you got to love it. I mean, it's just that simple.
And another thing too, I think what it would have added such great nuance to Batfleck in Batman vs Superman. There are a couple things. Showing how far he'd gone without him actually killing people, maybe coming close to killing people. But that would have been something great to see in the movie. And then Alfred just being like, dude, really? And just that. And then a small little aspect, I was talking with a friend of mine who's literally like a huge comic geek as well. And he said, what would have been a small, great thing to do is to show right before, when he's doing his training montage where he's getting ready to fight Superman, show that's when he puts the machine guns on the Batmobile. That's when he does it. Not before. Do it then, where it's just like, okay, this is how singular he's in killing Superman. That's how far.
Well, then he's just an idiot, though,
because the guns aren't going to do anything.
I know, but still, it's like it'll just have a show shift in mindset where this is how far he is now in order to need to be pulled back.
Yeah,
I think everything about Zack Snyder's Batman can be summed up in an interview with Zack Snyder, where he said if he wrote a Batman movie, Batman would go to prison and get raped.
Yeah, I think I read that same thing. He complained because there was no prison rape for Batman,
and he actually complained. I think way back when he was a kid and started reading comics, he's just like, why isn't everyone having sex with each other and killing each other? It's like, Jesus Christ.
I've been only that in comic books. Just not the ones I read.
I'm telling you.
What? So with all that being said, and we'll wrap up the show with this question. What do you guys think is the most important part to get right in a superhero novel? What's the hardest thing or the most important thing to get right for a new writer coming into the genre, in your opinion?
You want to go, Jeff? Go ahead.
I think it's the same thing for any book, really, is you got to know who your audience is. If you're writing for yourself, great, but don't expect to be successful. You need to know who your audience is and who you're writing for. Because if you're writing for my audience and you come at them with Watchmen, you're not selling books.
Yeah.
And if you're writing for Charles' audience and you come at them with a kid's novel, you're not selling books. You got to know who your audience is. Yeah.
And I'd say also just the hardest thing to get right, the thing I'd suggest is respect the genre, know the tropes. I'd say do your research, not just with comic books. Read who's the best sellers and also read some of the other books that are kind of maybe not as good, because I think that also helped me as well when I read there's a book, won't name it, but this book that I read and I was just like, God, this sucks. Like the names suck. Like it just kind of like it wasn't going anywhere. And ultimately making sure that the heroes continue to grow and that the heroes are heroic. Like it's not hard, you don't like, if you're writing superhero, like sometimes, like Jeff kind of, I think hinted at this early, is that you have people like, for instance, the superhero harem. And it's just like, that's not superhero. That's just harem with like a superhero sheet.
Yeah.
Just have the heroes being heroic and have them, fighting against all odds to whatever their goal is, whether to save a city, whether to stop a bad guy, whether to prevent a personal tragedy. Just get the heroes right. The heroes are the most important thing, and also have an antagonist that will make you root more for the hero. Because that's sometimes, a hero's only as good as their antagonist, and they need somebody who really tests their mettle and shows you who they are in the darkest of times. I'm going to get all preachy here. In the darkest of times, and when it's like when the chips are down, you see who the hero is, depending on whatever the threat, whatever the villain is, the antagonist force.
I think this is Leo Vaquero. He says, I am quoting something Scott Moon once told me, tropes are necessary, so is writing them well.
Yes,
that's true.
Absolutely.
I could do a whole episode on why I hate the word tropes and how people use it, but I won't. But the thing is you've got to know the genre. There's no genre. People like to say this about other genres. Well, that other genre, you don't really have to know things about it in order to write it. Anybody could write a Western. It's true of every genre. You have to know the genre well, and you have to respect it and love it. Otherwise, it comes out in the writing that you don't. Yeah. And I can't teach you how to write superheroes if you don't like superhero novels, if you don't like superhero comics, if you don't like superhero movies. And I get that all the time. Like, I want to write a superhero book. I'm like, oh, what's your favorite superhero movie? Well, I don't really like those superhero movies.
God.
No, it doesn't work that way.
No.
Talking about
you
tropes.
Say I want to write an epic fantasy, even though I hate Lord of the Rings. I mean,
Here's the thing: even if you don't like Lord of the Rings, if you at least like some epic fantasy, it doesn't have to be Lord of the Rings. It can be Game of Thrones. It can be anything Robin Hobb has done. It can be anything that like Jeff Wheeler's done. Like, as long as you like something and you can kind of draw from, not obviously copy it, but like at least draw from that. That's kind of where your love comes from. That's something. Even with when I kind of I added some supernatural stuff to my series. I made sure I did some research to make sure I was getting certain things right, whether it be like, what are some things a werewolf does? What are some things about a pack? And just certain folklore aspects, like what can you add that makes sure that you show respect for what you're adding, what you're bringing, what you're drawing into this story. And that goes for any genre, but it's just like for superheroes, it's the same thing. Have respect for it. That's the thing.
Scott, you were going to say something about tropes.
Oh, I was just going to say they might be more accurately described. Sean Coynes describes tropes as obligatory scenes. So, because there are, you have obligatory things that have to happen in a superhero thing. And if it's not in there, then it's not a superhero movie. Or like if you're writing a romance and you don't have certain obligatory things that happen, then it's not a romance. It's something else.
Right.
Like for instance,
but I think that's more what we mean when we say tropes as writers. We're talking about what is the nuts and bolts, the guts of this genre that must be there, or it's something else.
Yeah.
Trope sounds negative, like you're cheating or something. Like I cheated by using this trope.
Yeah.
Which is not.
I don't think they're cheating. I think they're shortcuts. I think people go to TV tropes, read tropes on whatever genre they want to read it on, and go, yeah, well, now I know all about that genre.
Well, I think that's
I can read a cookbook, but until I've actually made a cake, I'm not going to be able to get it right.
I think that's what goes back
the names
to
of the
genre. When you say trope, you can go look at the trope all day long and go, I see the trope, I can put the trope in there, but actually understanding what it means in the genre and knowing how to use it properly, like Scott's saying, like you can look at a list of tropes and see what they are, but until you actually understand what they do in the book, like that's something completely different. But anyway,
I'll add one more thing, just one more last thing. I think that I agree with Jeff in the sense that you definitely need to know your audience. You need to know the genre. I think, though, you do need to also, to quote J.R.R. Tolkien, you also want to read the type of story that you would like to read. Because as much as you want to make sure that you have your audience, you know your audience, you know that. But if you hate the story you're writing, then it's going to come across in your writing.
Right. And what's the point of doing it if you hate it?
What's the point if you hate it? Yeah.
So, man, that was a really good discussion. I can't believe it's been almost an hour and 20 minutes. What? Just time flies by. And you're like, what?
Having fun.
Yeah. Everybody in the live chat, thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us today. It's been a blast on this Monday. Bard of today showed up late. What's up, Bard? Corey Gillen was in the chat. Leo Vaccaro on Facebook. John Evans. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us on a Monday. If you're listening on the audio feed, don't forget to come and check us out on YouTube and subscribe to the show on YouTube. If you haven't liked this video, give it a like. Share it around to your friends if you got something valuable out of it. Hit the bell. You can get notified when we go live.
And get 5 of your friends to like, subscribe, and hit the bell too. That would be better.
True, very true.
Spread the love. Spread the love.
That's right. Charles, Jeff, thank you guys for coming on the show. It's been a blast.
Thanks for having us. It was fun.
Thanks for having us, Josh. Don't forget to check out my 24-hour live stream, February 2nd, 6:30 a.m. Watch me crash and burn. It'll be great.
And don't forget.
It'll be a great time.
Don't forget.
Watching blaze the way for us all to follow.
That's
The sixth book in the Pantheon Saga is coming out this Thursday. United We Stand. Check out the Pantheon Saga on Amazon.
True. All right, guys. Well, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you guys for coming on the show. We'll be back next Monday. Who is on the show next month? I think Steve and Red are coming on the show next week. Let's see.
Yeah, I think it's the Athon guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
If we can pull Steve away from his busy meme making career,
that's right.
And get him
like you literally something happens and you can see Steve's feed where he's just memeing the whole time.
I might skip that one because I'm afraid they'll spend the whole show making me feel guilty for how long I'm making them wait on this Jack Dark.
Oh no, you're definitely going to be in that show.
That's the whole purpose of the show. Now that you mention it, I'm just going to corner you.
Next week's going to be Steve and Rhett with the Athon guys, and then Chris Kennedy is going to be on the week after that. Talk about Chris Kennedy publishing, everything he has going on. Everybody that hang out with us today, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. Make sure you come back next week. We're going to talk about writing. We're going to talk about reading, and of course, everything in between, like coffee, right here on Keystroke Medium.